Welcome to Rebel Without a Limit podcast. I'm Hayley Coxon, and thank you for joining us, whether it's live or you're catching up. I appreciate you supporting this. It's very new and I'm still growing it. So any support and anyone that you know that might enjoy this show once you've watched it, please do share away and make sure that you like and subscribe so any notifications will come your way when there's any content being shared or any lives coming up. So this evening is quite a special show. I brought you athletes so far, and tonight I'm going to bring you a quite fantastic human being and coach as well, Mr. Kev O'Neill from Breatheolution. We're going to be talking mindset, of course, but also breath work, cold water therapy, and so much more. So if you are watching live, please do tag your friends in, comment, share your questions. So this evening, I not only have my own questions for the man himself, but I'll also be including some of your questions that you've sent in on socials. So thank you for those. I will be firing them at the man himself very, very soon. So without further ado, I'm going to invite the man in, Mr. Kev O'Neill. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Hayley. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for accepting my invite. I love what you're doing. I love what you represent and the impact that you're having and the community that you're building, really.
Sure, yeah. It's been, as what they say, a bit of a roller coaster the last few years. Probably up to date, I've probably seen in and around probably near enough 2,000 people. I think with group sessions and one-to-ones and small groups of families and stuff. It's been amazing, really.
Wow, the impact there and the imprint that you're making. So sure. Before we do go back and talk about your story up until this point, where are you coming from? If you're just anyone that doesn't know you at this point, where are you coming in from and where are you practicing?
So basically I'm the founder of Breatheolution, as you can see behind me then. This is a name I come up with about 3 years ago when I sort of found myself sort of dropped into doing breath work and cold water therapy, and it's kind of just sort of taken off from there, and it's become my job now. This is what I do. I coach people. I have a website that you can go to, breatheolution.com. It's a bit vague on there because I don't really get much time to go on it, and as we spoke about before, I'm a bit of a technophobe as well. I've sort of landed in cold water and breath really by mistake. Just by the off chance, I went in with a friend of mine into the cold, and it was amazing, really, what I found with it. And the breath work was just completely life changing for me, and it has been ever since. Really helped me with addiction and helped me to sort of get my head around all sorts of issues that I had personally. It continues to be life changing for so many.
Brilliant. We've got a comment here. Ben Eastwood says, "Hey guys, big love, King Kev." And you got love 2 kisses.
Yeah, well, absolutely. He's not shy with his kisses, is Ben. But yeah, Ben Eastwood's amazing. Me and Ben do elements sessions. We set up a group called Elements, and we take people out. We get them to step out of their comfort zone and make the uncomfortable comfortable. And that's making waves with people, mentally and physically. So yeah, Ben, follow Ben Eastwood on Instagram. He's doing some amazing stuff. He's a tough fella, and I absolutely adore him. Yeah, he's brilliant. He's kept me going. Last few years we've sort of bounced off one another, but he does a lot of this cold and breath himself. He's coming with me to Ireland to do the Oxygen Advantage advanced training. So really looking forward to that.
Amazing. So I'm sure we'll come back to that and touch on that again as we go further into the chat. So I'd just like to go back a little bit then, Kev, if that's okay. We've got some hearts from in now, sharing the love. Bring it on, Ben. Thank you. Tell me a little bit how, pre-finding breathwork, because I know you've had as we all have had experiences in our lives that have challenged us. And you've turned your multiple challenges into strengths, really. And I love that mindset. And that's a mindset really draws me in and really inspires me. And that's what really was magnetic about you for me in your practices. So tell me what brought you and how you were brought to breathwork and everything that you're doing now.
Yeah, like I say, it was pretty much by accident, really. And I've been an asthmatic all my life. And to be honest, I struggled with focus. I struggled with school a lot of the time, and almost definitely throughout school I had ADHD, and that is affected actually by your breathing. In fact, it's connected to quite a lot of people that have ADHD are chronically hyperventilating. And because of that, I kind of struggled with addiction. Pretty much sort of on the same path as sort of Ben Eastwood, really. We sort of struggled with addiction and ego and the mind, and constantly being in the head, as opposed to being able to focus and concentrate. And it's this that's kind of led me into it, really, because I was struggling with alcohol addiction for about maybe 15 years, maybe even longer. And I wasn't always, a reliable husband. I wasn't always a reliable father, and completely sort of overwhelmed, really, by searching for dopamine. And although at the time I didn't really know what it was or what it was doing, but these quick fixes, I was just completely trapped in it. And something quite significant happened. I lost my sister in 2019, our Yvonne, and she was only 49, Yvonne. And it was life-changing, that for me, because I know now, obviously, that it's a part of your safety that's removed forever. And she was part of my safety when I was a child, and being an older sister. And like I say, she died, and I watched her die. And at that point, then I realised I had to sort of make some decent changes myself and stop the drink. Otherwise, I was, the likelihood is that I could, be dying early myself. So I did. Not long after that, I decided to quit drinking. And I wasn't just addicted to drink. I had trouble with cocaine addiction as well, and all sorts. I was addicted to pornography for ages as well. And it was there were certain times in my life that were really, really difficult, and that just kind of finished it off, really. And I decided from that point then that something needs to change. So I stopped drinking. I signed up sort of for this 1 year without alcohol, and it was life changing. Yeah, when I stopped drinking, it was life changing.
It's incredible, really, that you don't habitually, the relationship you can get into with drinking, and you don't realize the pattern of which that you get caught up in when alcohol is predominantly in your life, do you? And when you just even take it out for a week or for a month, I bet there's a lot of people in this dry January that get in that reality of wow, the clarity of just cutting it out just for a short period of time. And the mission then comes, and the challenge then comes, is to maintain it, isn't it? And finding it, resetting your relationship with it, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and obviously then your body, the huge chemistry set, starts to look for dopamine, and it generally tries to find it in other places, because you've been constantly used to quick fix of dopamine, which is what alcohol provides. But what you sort of do is focus on things that sort of release dopamine a bit slower in the body, and that are more healthy, which in my case was breath work and cold water. And although I didn't realize it at the time, it was stopping me from going back to the booze. But I didn't understand it then. I understand what it did now. And this is the information I'm trying to give to people. I'm trying to explain why that sort of healthy dopamine is very different rather than the addictive.
I love it. I love it. I remember before lockdown, I had a pop-up wellness studio in the Albert Dock in Liverpool, and I brought a guy in from Manchester actually to do a holotropic breathwork workshop.
Okay.
And it's the first time that I'd ever done it. I think there was one girl, there was 8 of us in the room, one girl had done it before, and the experience that we had was just, it was another level, level. Everyone's mind was blown of where it took us and the release that it gave us, but the clarity, but also the journey, that naturally the high you get from it without any change. You know, it's just incredible, and presence in your body and in your mind. It's just the most beautiful thing.
Sure. That was it Craig Seaton, that?
It was.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's lovely, Craig. I've not met the guy yet. I've had a few messages with him, but he's supposed to be an amazing breath coach. And
yeah.
The thing is that with holotropic breath work, there are certain things that are going on in the body. They don't normally tell you really what's going to happen in your body. They just allow you to come in and explain that you're going to do some breath work, explain a bit of the sensations, and then let you just roll with it and go with it and see what comes up. You know, people sometimes they're hysterically laughing, sometimes they're hysterically crying. You know, there's all sorts of emotions that the autonomic nervous system will push forward to get you to stop breathing like that, really. That's what it's doing. Because the nervous system doesn't really want you to hyperventilate, doesn't want you to become hypoxic. It wants you to be safe all the time. So it'll do anything to get you to stop, which is why these outbursts or releases of trauma that people think that they're having. But yeah. I struggle with the word release, and I'm kind of winding everybody up really, because in theory, in terms of how the body keeps the score, you can't release trauma. You can process trauma, you can soothe it, and you can understand and practice how to not react to old trauma, but you'll never remove it, because the nature of the nervous system is to use that very trauma to keep you safe, to keep you alive. So in terms of the body keeping the score, it's not really possible to heal something that is an instinctual sort of part of your fight or flight response.
So you're re-imprinting your connection to it, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bit like uploading.
That.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you're kind of uploading new software and reprocessing the event maybe, and going through the characteristics of, because it's connected to your breath, because every moment that you've ever been through during your life, if we think about how the body keeps the score, this amazing book by Bessel van der Kolk, and there's been other scientific papers since, many of how the organism has its own memory, not like a cognitive mind, but it holds on to everything from your very first breath, your first gasp, when you come out, when you're born. It's kind of keeping a score of everything that's respiratory. Every emotion that you ever go through as a human being is kind of stored in the fascia of your body. It's stored inside you, and your body has the capability of using any of that to get you back to safety. You know, so it's a remarkable tool. It can be used in so many ways.
Love it. So one of the questions we had, Kev, was that came in on Instagram, because you hear all these different styles, and I know we'll talk about the style of which that you practice. I'm going to take a guess at pronouncing it, Buteyko, but I have no idea.
Yeah, Buteyko. Yeah. Buteyko, that's the closest. Yeah, people call it potato. I call it all sorts of stuff.
So there's all these different versions that you see out there. So for a beginner, so there's a lady that sent a question in. If she wants to just get going with some breath work, introduce it into a self-care routine, what's the best way of taking the steps towards doing that, the basics really?
Well, in my opinion, I don't really think that you ever experience breath work in terms of the word breath work, and obviously the word breath work is being used. It's just breathing, and you know, you've been breathing for a long time. You know, if you're 40, you've been breathing for 40 years, 30,000 times a day, maybe. And it's the one thing that we do more than anything as an organism while we're here in, you know, potentially 100 years. So we're breathing all the time. It's connected to everything that we do, every environment that we step into, every temperature that we step into, potentially your breath is changed. Every human being that you see and meet or that you communicate with, your breathing potentially could alter with every conversation, every different person. It's an amazing thing. Who knows? But the best way to start with breath is to sit quiet and listen to yours, really, and slow your breathing down. Everybody at the moment is all about fast breathing, deep breathing, lots of air, getting loads of air into the body. Whereas in actual fact, the most sort of crucial benefits really come through breathing slower, which goes back to ancient sort of yogic practices of pranayama. You're breathing light, long, slow, deep diaphragmatic breaths, but reducing the amount of air that you take into your body per minute, as opposed to potentially maybe breathing too fast. And breathing too fast doesn't necessarily suit everybody. Wim Hof breathing isn't for everybody. Some people are too anxious, or they're suffering from trauma or PTSD, and they can't over breathe through the mouth because it's far too much connected for that individual to their trauma. So they become so emotional very quickly that they can't really get into it. For some people, it's amazing. For some people with anxiety that have managed to do the Wim Hof method, which is incredible. It's been so beneficial for so many, but for so many, they cannot do it because the minute they sort of they're straight into their trauma, and they feel it emotionally, sensationally in the body. They feel their trauma. They can almost smell or even taste it. The nervous system will just flip you back, and you'll, as you said before, you kind of release some of that, maybe the emotion that you had at the time of your trauma. Could be 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it'll get you to come out of it, if the body doesn't want it. So that was a long-winded explanation.
No, it was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. It's such an important and seems so simple tool, isn't it? And we take it for granted how we can breathe, but we take it for granted how powerful the relationship with our breath is, don't we? And it can very easily and too easily get not disowned, but get missed, really, and how building that connection can be so powerful for yourself, for recovery, for sports people, for anxiety, for so many different health factors.
Yeah, because it's there all the time through sleep.
Yeah.
It supports you there. Like the big deep breath I had then, that was a sigh. And they're kind of like resets, the sighs. And they're also opening up alveoli in the lungs. They're helping to keep the function of the body at homeostasis. So respiratory health, your breathing, oxygen, biochemistry is connected to you as a life force. It's life force to the body is the breath. You can last for weeks without food and days without water, but only a few minutes without air. So something that we should be really focusing on more than anything else, really. Yet we're not taught to breathe properly, and I work with people, very, very, very intelligent people. In fact, even some GPs in the past who kind of forget very fundamental parts of the respiratory system, yet it controls and influences just every part of the human body, the brain, the body, the cardiovascular system, your thermoregulation, your blood, your endocrine system, your kidneys, your liver, your pancreas, your spleen, your eyes, your hormones. It's all connected to respiratory. It's all connected to how much oxygen you get into your body. In fact, the whole's kind of set up, really. The evolution of mankind has kind of relied upon the human diaphragm. The only reason that we've been allowed to sort of evolve to where we are, supposedly the dominant species, is because of the ability to get in so much oxygen.
Love it. So we had a question again off Instagram. Anybody that's tuned us, we've still got Ben with us off Instagram, and it was about IBS. And the question was, can breath work help with IBS?
Sure. Irritable bowel syndrome, gut trouble, acid reflux, digestive problems, constipation, cramps. More and more people are suffering with this, and there are direct links to chronic hyperventilation and bowel and tummy issues. In fact, you can read some of them in the Breathing Cure through from Patrick McKeown, and even if you Google it, there are connections. But if you imagine how your body works while you're moving, and if you understand sort of how your body works when it's at rest, also bearing in mind that we don't move as much as we used to. Okay, we're moving less. However, things are starting to change again now. People are being told that movement is so important. When you breathe, your diaphragm has to drop kind of 3 centimeters. Your diaphragm is this kind of arch-shaped muscle. So your diaphragm drops, it sort of changes and reduces the pressure in your thorax, in your thoracic chamber, so that your lungs can inflate with oxygen at 14 psi atmospheric pressure. But when it does so, it also increases the pressure in your abdominal cavity. And this increase in the abdominal cavity and the movement itself is kind of massaging your gut, your intestines, and your bowel. So this movement, if it's correct and it's deep and it's 3 centimeters where it should be, it actually kind of aids with your digestion. So the diaphragm isn't just a siphon that's allowing the lungs to fill with air and to empty with air as it contracts and moves back up. It's actually connected to the digestive tract and system as well. And in females, it's connected to the pelvic floor as well. So this body is absolutely perfect. It's evolutionary perfection. So if we alter one thing, it's going to directly affect the other. And, you know, the first thing you do when you're born is you breathe. When you come out, you gasp. And the second thing you do is you eat. So we focused as human beings just on those 2 things, on perfecting those 2 things that we give our body, food and breath, and food and drink. You know, people would be far more healthier just by you know, perfecting those two things.
I love it, because generally in the society that we live in now, the key focus can be the physical look, can't it? How they're looking, how they're training in the gym, how they're physically looking, and that internal strength is what is going to give you the longevity in that physical strength, isn't it? And the mental strength. So it's the mental and the physical fitness. But I do think there's been a big shift. I don't know what your opinion is on that. And people are becoming more aware and more aware of these simple but even more powerful tools, which is, I think it's incredible to see.
It is really, yeah. We focus so much on looks and on appearance, and you know, that does actually affect the clothing that we wear. You know, not just women. You know, men wear girdles too. I've witnessed it. And you know, sports bras. We don't have to look at sports bras, and if you've worn one, Hayley, you'll know that when you take one off, you sometimes have a breath out when you take it off, when you remove it. Or sometimes women say when they take their bras off, they kind of breathe out. So what is that? It's kind of a bit of a sign off the body. It's kind of a relief or release, if you like. So is that item of clothing restricting you? Well, yeah, it is. I suppose if you go back and look at the respiratory health of women when they were wearing corsets, they were struggling. Exactly. Because that's holding the diaphragm. It's stopping the diaphragm from moving. So it's affecting the biomechanics of the body. So it's not allowing the lower ribs to expand up and out to allow the lungs to fill to capacity, to get the alveoli activated in the lungs, which is where all this gas exchange takes place in the lungs between bronchioles 16 and 23 in the lungs. This is where all the action takes place. This is where oxygen attaches to hemoglobin in your blood. This is how we get the oxygen. But biomechanically, if we're restricted by girdles and spanks and pants and things that hold us in, what's happening? It's restricting the flow. So there's just so many other areas, and holding your tummy in when you're going out. You know, we all do this. You know, men are proud too. We go in and we hold our tummies in so that we look good in our t-shirts and chests are out. And women are the same. They put these trouser suits on and their dresses and they kind of hold in. Now, if you're doing that for 4 or 5 hours while you're out, you're holding yourself in, you're breathing up here. So if you're breathing up here, you're not breathing diaphragmatically. So breathing needs to be looked at from kind of 3 dimensions. So it needs to be looked at, first of all, just, you know, check the biomechanics. How are you breathing? Are you breathing deeply? Are you breathing diaphragmatically? This will then have an effect on your biochemistry, because it changes the chemicals in your body. It changes how much oxygen you get. It changes the relationship between hemoglobin and oxygen, and how oxygen attracts to hemoglobin in your blood because of the Bohr effect. It then changes carbon dioxide levels in the body. This then affects the bicarbonate buffering system of your kidneys, and on and so forth. And then the other pillar is the cadence, the flow. How much air are you getting in? How much air per minute are you taking into the lungs? How many breaths per minute are you doing? Are you breathing too shallow and fast, or are you breathing longer? So breath is complex, but, you know, amazing.
And the presence it gives you in your body as well, and in the moment, just taking that breath, you know, like when you can feel you're getting overwhelmed or ungrounded, you just take that breath and it just brings you present again, doesn't it? Back into the body. And it's just a relief to regain control, isn't it? Or take your power back, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. And why aren't doctors telling anxious people how to do this? Why are they not telling them to breathe in for 4 seconds, out for 6 seconds, breathing in through your nose and out through your nose? When you get to 6, you feel a bit different. You feel a bit calmer, a bit more relaxed, just on one breath. So in theory, you can use your breath as an anchor. It takes practice. You know, there'll be some people out there say, oh yeah, I'm having a panic attack, I'm just going to breathe like this and, you know, everything's going to be okay. No, it takes practice, because it takes years and years and years to chronically hyperventilate, to change the way that you breathe. You could have been potentially overbreathing since you were 3, 4, 5 years old. You might be in your 40s or 50s. So that's going to take effort. It's going to take practice, you know, but everybody is capable of changing the way that they breathe, and subsequently changing their blood pressure, changing the acidity of their blood. You know, bodies that are low in oxygen are connected to things like diabetes, cancer, hyperthyroidism. There's so much dysfunction in humans that's connected to bodies that are low oxygen. This is why Christies still send people to hyperbaric chambers when they've got cancer, because they know that most cancers don't survive very well in oxygen. So why don't they tell people to breathe through the organ that is for breathing, so that they get more of it?
Honestly, we need more of these conversations happening to create the awareness and education around it. The one fact that I've always loved about breathwork as well is, because I'm big on toxins in the body, you know, what you're putting on the body, what you're putting in the body. And don't you release, what's the figure? Is it about 70% of your toxins are released through your breath? Is that right?
I don't know the exact figure, but yeah, absolutely. And, you know, even again, the diaphragm, that's connected to your lymphatic system. It's a pump. So it's massaging toxins from your body. So that, again, another role of the diaphragm. So if you're not using it correctly, and it's only getting a third of its movement, it changes everything. It changes your whole biochemistry. So start with the breath. It takes practice, and but it's amazing what you can change in just a very short space of time.
Love it. All right, so breath work then. So we're going to move on to breath work is absolutely needed when you're doing cold water therapy, isn't it? And that's another duo, like a powerful duo, really, that can support you in finding your balance in the mind and in the body. But you've got to have your breath work on, haven't you, in order to do the cold water therapy?
Sure. And that's not easy to do either. But if you kind of perfect the breath, I say perfect it to a degree, but if you practice good breathing before you do any cold water therapy, it really does help for you to connect your mind to your body and to understand your own physiology when you're getting into the cold. And the cold is just a reliable source of kind of threatening environment, if you like. It's a reliable, because it's always cold. It's a reliable stressor on the body, as Wim Hof calls it. Stress the body, and put it under pressure. And when you stress the body, it causes adaptation. It causes repair. It makes you resilient to an external temperature. But it's not just the external temperature, it's where your mind is at, it's where your physiology is at, it's how comfortable you can make the uncomfortable by practice. And this is helping people with anxiety and panic disorder, PTSD, trauma, people in abusive relationships. They're finding the strength and the will to get out of these harsh environments. It's giving people the strength to go and win job interviews. It's working in just so many different ways. It's amazing. Some of the feedback I've got over the last few years has just been phenomenal. Some of it literally has been life-changing and saving. It's remarkable. And just something so simple. We're too warm these days. We're too hot.
Yeah. And it's taken our power back with it, isn't it? You throw yourself into there's no growth in comfort, is there? So you throw yourself into an uncomfortable situation, you're only going to learn and grow, and your self-awareness is going to improve, isn't it? But with the cold water therapy, the power that you're taking back and the gift that you're giving to your mind and your body is just, it's another level, isn't it? Rather than even with breath work and cold water therapy, too often now we can hand the baton over to somebody else to sort our health out, can't we? Hand the baton over to the doctor, to whoever it is, even our coach, like a good coach and a good teacher. I read this quote today. A great teacher opens the door for you, but it's up to you to walk through it. For sure.
So, yeah, we talk a lot about that. In fact, I talk a lot about that with Ben Eastwood. Whether he's still watching or not, but it's all about effort. It's all about allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is the greatest source of your strength. You can't grow. You mentioned it there. You cannot grow until you allow yourself to be vulnerable. So obviously there's different levels of that, and they use all sorts of ways of trying to explain what that is. In trees, the vulnerability is the leaves, because there's delicate shoots and you can tear them apart, but the trunk is and these king crabs on the bottom of the ocean, they have to shed their shell and everything can eat them, but if they don't shed their shell, they can't grow. So it's the same thing as that. You've got to try and shed your stuff, whatever that is, and be vulnerable. Sometimes it's difficult to be vulnerable, because in your past people may have been careless with your vulnerability. And if that is the case, sometimes it's very difficult to be vulnerable. It's difficult to get into the cold because it makes you feel so vulnerable. Sometimes it can make you feel emotional. So your breathing is important in the cold. It really is. The cold is just a tool that's reliable, and cold can be anything from 20 degrees down to 0 degrees. Cold is just a temperature that you feel uncomfortable in, but then eventually through breath control and through a little bit of mindfulness and a little bit of body to mind connection, you can start to make it feel a bit more comfortable. And this is what the amazing Wim Hof has done, and he's showing other people to do by, obviously, in his case, 30 odd years of getting in the cold. He gets into 2 degrees and it's like he's getting in a warm bath because he doesn't pay any attention to the sensations on the skin anymore. It just doesn't mean anything. Whereas somebody brand new getting into 2 degrees, puffing and panting, running off, no, not for me. No, not for me. Because they're just so used to being hot. We come out of a hot supermarket, air conditioned, with our North Face coats on and our warm hats and gloves and scarves, into a hot car, heated seats, drive home, nice and warm, into the hot house again, central heated. We're never cold, And from an evolutionary perspective, our ancestors were freezing cold.
Yeah, that comfort, the resilience that you can build, and the resilience is so important now, isn't it? Especially how much we've been taught or had to learn about ourselves in these last few years, when everything was kind of taken out of our hands. And what can we take back? What power can we take back? Or what control really can we take back? And that was really to go within and really go deep. And it was a time of learning for so many and resetting. And a great time. I saw some real amazing breakthroughs in lockdown because of the simple and amazing stuff that was getting shared online, and communities coming together. And that's what you've been doing. And you've got a few communities going on there, haven't you? So tell us a bit about the different communities that you're involved in. It's beautiful to see.
Yeah, I've just worked with such a diversity of people, really. I'm about to start to do some work with some schools and doing some work with young offenders and some people that are generally sort of struggling. And I work with people from all walks of life, but generally, people that have got pasts, people that have got trouble with addiction, and probably more people that were sort of close to where I was, really, that maybe ADHD. ADHD is massive at the moment. Everybody's talking about attention deficit, and it's just so connected to respiratory health. So, but yeah, I'm working with some amazing people. I'm working with yoga retreats and the wonderful Scott Thomas and his retreat in the Lake District as well, which looks like a lot of fun this year, and just so many other amazing people that have asked me to come and facilitate this year. I'm so excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And they're lucky to have you, obviously.
Well, who knows?
So you tell us a bit about, so I know I had a good friend of mine, Rick, he's been on this podcast already, actually. He was episode 2, Rick and his girlfriend, Laura. They joined you, and the experience in just looks like such a stunning location, and the process of which that you guide people through. So tell us a little bit about that, Kev.
The process of kind of pretty much stuck to the same, really, only because the feedback was quite reliable in terms of what people were getting from it. And one of the reasons why I've avoided the big group sessions, and there's people doing group sessions out there now because, one, it's more financially viable, and there are other reasons why people are doing sort of big group sessions, but you don't really get as much from it when you're in a big group. And the reason why is that because you need to build resilience on your own. And even if you come in as a couple, the resilience that you build in the cold and with your breath when you're in a couple is different to the resilience that you'll build when you're on your own. And the reason I've kept it to quite intimate or small groups or one-to-ones is because the feedback that I got from the one-to-ones was and has been and still is absolutely phenomenal, and like I say, life-changing. So I've kept it that way for that reason. But basically, I take you back all the way to your first breath. In fact, I'll even take you back into 3rd trimester where you're practicing to breathe, and I'll take you through the biochemistry and the science connected to you as an organism. I tend to keep the human aspect out of it at the beginning because I want people to understand what's going on in their physiology. I want people to understand that we're just animals, and that, you know, right at the very, very base and root of it all, we're just cells. And, you know, if you understand how life started on Earth, it started with a cell trying to exist, trying to survive. And that cell felt vulnerable because something tried to get it. So it had to adapt, that cell, and it did. And we're all here because of it. So if we go back, and I'm not talking about, sometimes people come in and they say, you know, go back to when you started to feel anxious, and they say, well, 2 years ago. No, keep going to that when you felt vulnerable. And, you know, to a certain degree, you felt vulnerable in the womb on occasion, but the first time that you ever kind of felt fight or flight as an organism is when you were born. You're pushed through a narrow canal after being in the safest, most regulated temperature and nourishing space that you'll ever be before you die, in the womb of your mother. And that parasympathetic haven for 9 months, it's cut off. You're pushed into fight or flight. Trauma, maybe, if you kind of look at it from the body keeping the score point of view, maybe. You're pushed through a narrow canal, it's stressful, and you come out, it's cold, the temperature's different, there might be bright lights. You're frightened because you're separated from the thing that you've been connected to for 9 whole months. It's frightening. We don't remember it, but the body does. It has to, because it has to survive. And Charles Darwin spoke about it in 1872. He said that the fundamental purpose of human emotions is to initiate movement in the animal, in the organism, to get back to safety, physical equilibrium. So what does he mean by that? He kind of means that to get back to parasympathetic state, to mate with other animals, with other mates, we have to get back to parasympathetic. And the way that the body does that is by constantly going on a roller coaster from vulnerability to safety, vulnerability to safety, vulnerability to safety. And that's how we're born. We're born, it was safety, vulnerability. As soon as we come out, we gasp, take the first breath. The brain witnesses the first breath, the pre-Botzinger complex in the brain, the amygdala, the medulla, the breathing centers, the chemoreceptors, blood monitors in the body. There's an explosion of the first breath. Wow, there we go. And everything kicks off. But you feel frightened at that moment. But you have to get back to parasympathetic. What can you do? You can't really do anything apart from, get me back.
Yeah.
But of course, you can't go back. But eventually, your caregiver, your mother, she holds you. And all right, there are anomalies where that doesn't happen. But most of the time, from an evolutionary perspective, you come back to safety, nurture. And then you're made to breathe through your nose. Why? Because you have to eat. So why is it then that when we breathe through our noses that we feel safe? It's because the first time you ever felt that was on your mother. Because you went from to and you even fell asleep on the breast. So there's so many connections to the breath. Your pre-Botzinger complex and your brain witnessed that nasal breathing very early on, and then you put the animal down in the cot. What does it do? It wakes up. Emotion again. What happens? Shh, I've got you. And so on and so on and so on and so forth. So even as adults, as children, we go all the way through life and adulthood in the same action, vulnerability and safety. So if we're vulnerable, going back to what you said before, if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we feel safer.
It just goes to so many different angles in life, doesn't it? When the tool of it and the self-awareness and the power that comes with it, it filters through to every area in your life, doesn't it?
Sure.
The shifts you must get to witness and be a part of must be complete, just so incredible. and so fulfilling, holding that space for people and watching them commit to that space and that technique, and just seeing where they go from and to. Must be incredible.
For sure. It is incredible, yeah, and it doesn't always happen overnight, you know, obviously these, you know, but the thing is that if you go to a big group session and you get in with a load of other people, you're kind of paying a lot of attention to the other people. You're not really paying much attention to self. And you can't really do the work unless you do yourself. You know, you've got to see your shadow. And sometimes you can't see your shadow because you're being overshadowed by others. And the shadow that you see whilst you're amongst others is a bit different to the shadow that you see when you're on your own. Because the thing is that the nature of the organism is that the minute they cut the cord, you're on your own. And get used to it. In fact, learn to love it.
Fantastic. Love that. Sure. Love it. So you, I could talk for hours with you, I think. We've touched on cold water therapy with the breath work, and then your ceremonies, if I could call them that you do with your clients. Now you also, you touch very much so on the nervous system. This is a big conversation that's starting to have a light shone on it now. I feel like it's starting to come into conversations and talks and podcasts a lot more. And that nervous system, you could even go back to that journey you were just talking about when you're coming out of the womb, and that kind of imprint in your nervous system straight from the get-go, and how it can be the vibration of that, I guess, can be repeated until you reset it. Would that be right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think as science moves forward now, I think we're going to learn more and more and more about it. We know a lot, but the body knows better than we do. You know, we can't underestimate millions of years of absolute perfection, evolution to get to this point. And we're just kind of playing with it, really, to try and understand what it does. And we still don't understand so much, but we understand a lot. And in terms of the nervous system, because your nervous system is absolutely, completely unique to you as an individual, and your consciousness and your experience, it's not, the world is never witnessed the same by any human that's ever lived, or by any animal that's ever lived. That is how unique everybody is, or nor will anybody ever experience it the same way again. So it's not one size shoe fits all with anything, with breath work, with cold water, with therapy, with understanding. Because we understand one human, we have no idea about the other. And I think, you know, things like hormones and things like that, and menopause, like Davina McCall's gone sort of into sort of menopause recently, and you can't medicate women on all the same. They're all completely different in thousands of different ways, you know, so each individual human has to be treated completely individual. I kind of lost my train of thought there from what you originally asked me, but I tend to go all over the place.
No, it's great. It's the nervous system, isn't it? So the nervous system is unique. So I guess your plan and your approach, although you would, I'm guessing you would address it with the cold walk and the breath work, but it is still a unique experience to the individual, isn't it? And how they receive it and approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to understand your own nervous system, especially when you've been through complex PTSD and trauma, and everybody's been through trauma, you know, people talk about, you know, somebody's witnessed something in their lives that the body remembers to get them back to safety. But the nervous system is just so complex. You know, the central nervous system and autonomic nervous system for sure is an amazing bit of kit. You know, we can influence it, and to a degree, the autonomic nervous system. But there's definitely more work that needs to be done. I think more science needs to be done with the nervous system, the vagus nerve. The scientists are working hard. I did a session the other day with a cardiac specialist, a cardiologist, and and a psychologist. So that was an interesting session. It was quite a hard one and pretty hard work at times. But she was kind of explaining, the cardiologist, that they're trying to invent a device that activates or stimulates the vagus nerve into a more parasympathetic state using electric shocks. Just get people to breathe properly, and work with people on a holistic level and a knowledgeable level, rather than trying to market something that's going to charge people money so that they can find relaxation. It's typical of the health authorities to try and cash in on vagus nerve. Vile. Isn't that vile? A unit that we can use to, how much is it going to cost? And this is the problem, I think, especially in the West. We're just so, focused on money straight away, which is why they don't really want Buteyko instructors, because if everybody was breathing correctly, A&E departments would be quieter. They would be, and hospitals would have less beds filled if people were breathing and eating correctly and moving. So, but they don't want that because it doesn't pay taxes and it doesn't buy medicine. It would cost it would cost them trillions of pounds overnight if everybody started breathing properly.
And it doesn't feed the mindset, oh, you must rely on us to find the answers to your body and your mind. When we all know the only person that's ever living in our mind and in our body and 24/7 is us, isn't it? And we're the only people that will truly know our minds and our body if we take the time to do that, and we take our power back and take the time to do it and build the awareness to do it.
100%.
Love it, Kev.
Yeah, 100%.
What you're doing is so important. I feel privileged to have an hour of your time. Just incredible, and look, so much fun as well. The smiles on everyone's face.
It's a lot of fun. Not at the beginning, but it is a lot of fun eventually once it starts to settle in. But I cannot underestimate how important it is that you do sort of self work, and it's no good going away from one of these sessions and not implementing it. And Ben Eastwood talks about this as well. People, they just don't seem to put enough effort in when they go home. They go and do the experience, and then they just step away. Oh, I tried mouth taping at night. It wasn't for me. I give it 2 nights, but it wasn't for me. So I'm not doing it anymore. It's like, no, come on, keep going, persevere. It's taken years for you to become a mouth breather, a snorer, because nobody should be snoring. It's causing problems. Sleep apnea is rife, and they're making more and more and more CPAP machines because people need them, because they're stopping breathing at night. And that's because, it's undoable. But it's getting people to carry on with these exercises and to make them part of your daily routine, like they do in the East. They get up, they have rituals. This is where we need to be. It's hard. I know it's hard. There are probably mothers out there screaming at me saying, well, I can't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do my yoga and thinking, because I've got kids to take to school and stuff like that. And Instagram all looks mamby-pamby, as if it's a beautiful, it's dead easy this. Oh, yeah, get up, the wow hour. Oh, let's have the wow hour. Not quite as easy as that. People have got busy lives. They work shifts. They can't always have the wow hour. So, we've got to try and make it so that it fits everybody. And that's going to be really, really difficult to do. But it just needs a lot more money pumping into this, a lot more charity money as well. And then everybody can have it. It shouldn't just be, I try and keep my prices as low as I can for my time, bearing in mind that I've got, mortgages and bills to pay myself. But there should be more money injected in so that people who literally don't have any money can benefit from this knowledge and this information and this therapy, because I think a lot of the time they need it the most, and I'm a firm believer in that. More money needs to be injected into more holistic stuff before we fill beds, before we take tablets. They don't always work.
I completely agree, and it's it's our choices, isn't it? You know, we can choose to have the time or make the time to do these things, or we can choose not to. I love the quote, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's one of my favorite quotes.
Brilliant.
But I love it. Thank you for your time, Kev. I've just
You're
got a couple
welcome.
of
Thank you.
questions with you before we do finish.
Sure.
Before I do move into the final two questions, from an athlete's perspective, what the key, so I've had, I will be hopefully having more athletes on this podcast, and I've had some already, but benefit-wise, so the key benefits for athletes when it comes to breath work and cold water therapy, or competitors really.
I think what the oxygen advantage is doing at the moment with athletes is just amazing. And you know, I mentioned before biochemistry, but altering your biochemistry and trying to influence the chemoreceptor sensitivity of your body to carbon dioxide can reduce panting. It means that you can get more oxygen into your body. It's going to increase performance. It is increasing sprintability in sports like rugby and football, and you know, it's got such a broad spectrum, this, and it literally is, you know, changing your physiology. It takes time, it takes practice, but you know, the All Blacks are using this, and this is obviously from oxygen advantage side, but the All Blacks are, you know, some of them players were getting, I think it was like a 9% increase in sprintability. They had a control group and then a group that were sprinting and holding their breath and feeling this suffocation, but getting used to CO2. It's like training at altitude, but they were getting 9% increase in sprintability. Now at that level, you know, that's massive. If you ask any rugby player, 9%, they'd be clutching at straws to try and get 1%. So you know, that's massive. And I had I spoke to, you know, to Patrick today about sudden death syndrome on football pitches, and cardiovascular issues and racing heart rates, arrhythmia and atrial fibrillation. You know, the heart is sat between the lungs. It's kind of moved by the diaphragm. It's all interconnected. If our breathing is in flow, if it's in time, if we perfect our breathing, just what can it change in the human body? So from an athletic point of view, just to give you an example, when I first started, I was told to tape my mouth shut while I ran. And I thought this idea was absurd. I've had asthma all my life. And I've had asthma since I was 5 years old, Hayley. And I'm ready to cancel my prescription for inhalers. I don't use them, because the Buteyko method completely changed my biochemistry. It took a while to get there, but I couldn't run 500 yards without taking the tape off. I felt as though I was suffocating. And within about 4 or 5 months, maybe a bit longer, I can't quite remember, I'd run a half marathon tape shut. So what happens in that space of time is that you're changing your chemoreceptor reflex to CO2, and that's connected to anxiety also. So you know, it's amazing what's coming up. Next few years with breath are going to be phenomenal.
I guess, Kev, it's, if you think about, well, generally, if we think about the fitness program we would put in place, if we want to get stronger, so there's a certain something we want to lift, or we want to look a certain way. Generally, we know a certain program we can follow to get ourselves there, physically fit. Now, this is, again, it's another form of physical fitness, isn't it? And it's just a new way of thinking of your physical fitness program, whether you're an athlete, a competitor, or just somebody who wants to reach optimum performance.
Sure. Everybody talks about diet and how many repetitions, how much weight, distance, time, performance, competitors, you know, who the people that you're training with, training during the day, training during night. Everybody forgets the breath. And it's the one thing that is critically there, apart from free diving, that's there when you need it. And if you're not getting enough of it, or if you're doing too much of it, it affects your biochemistry. Nobody should be panting when they're going for a jog. You're panting because we're kind of creatures of habit. If you're breathing through your mouth too much as part of your day, part of your role, part of your life, you're going to breathe too much through the mouth maybe at night, and then you're going to breathe a bit too much through the mouth when you exercise. Now, when I ran, I used to constantly was panting and feeling hot and sweaty and lightheaded, because I wasn't getting enough oxygen. I was hyperventilating. Whereas now I always run with tape on my mouth. I never go anywhere, even uphill. I'm taped up. But originally I could never even breathe through my nose properly, never mind run. So, what that's done for my asthma is phenomenal. If I feel symptoms of wheeziness coming on, because I still have it, which is very rare, but when I laugh a lot, it causes restriction. So I get wheezing. I can take a breath in for about sort of 30, 40 seconds and breathe out for about 30 seconds. And when they get to the bottom of the exhale, the symptoms have kind of dissipated. They've disappeared. So what's going on there? I didn't need to use an inhaler or a steroid to reduce it. I mean, everybody should know that with asthma. Everybody.
Wow. We got a couple more comments from Ben. He says, "I'm here, mate. It's down to the person to take ownership. We only guide." Absolutely. I completely agree.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Ben's
great.
a coach. Ben's a mindset coach as well. He's amazing at what he does. And, over the last few years, he's helped me to move through this in so many ways. My training completely stepped up a gear when I started to train with Ben. We've done some crazy stuff with masks and taping up and tying our hands behind a bed, crawling through rivers and tunnels and all sorts. I had such fun over the last few years. Yeah, I'm getting a bit too old for it now, I think, but Ben isn't.
It's all about mindset, never too old.
No, exactly, absolutely.
Well, right, Kev, so I've got two more questions for you before we do round this conversation up.
Okay.
Now, your 3 words that you would define a limitless mindset, you would use to define a limitless mindset.
A limitless mindset. Crikey. That's a tricky one, isn't it? I think you even told me what it was before, so I probably even had time to even think of it. A limitless mindset. Just 3 individual words.
Yeah, or also, what does a limitless mindset mean to you? So they could kind of would come together, what a limitless mindset would mean to you.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that. So put me on the spot a bit. The limitless mindset is so many things, though. You see, this is the thing. And the limitless mindset for me is completely different to the limitless mindset of others. But the limitless mindset, I suppose, really is presence. And I think you'll struggle, you'll struggle to get anywhere really in terms of limitation if you don't learn to be present, and if you don't learn to focus on what your mind and your body is constantly telling you from the minute, for every minute of every day, even while you're asleep. So yeah, I know that's a bit of a weird answer, but that's pretty much where it goes to, really.
It's a great answer. Love it. Presence is key for everything, isn't it, really, for you to optimize the whole picture. Picture.
I say to Ben all the time, you can do anything that any other man or woman can do. It all depends on how much you want it. You can go and do anything you want. And everybody says that. Arnold Schwarzenegger said it, Mike Tyson, but you've got to make the uncomfortable comfortable to do it. I hate these. I don't like these videos. I don't like being in a camera. A couple of years ago, I would have not done this. It would have been too embarrassing for me. But you've just got to keep doing it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And guess what? That's just the same as the cold. Guess what? It's just the same as running and holding your breath. It's horrible at first. You know what? It gets easier. Just like the gym. Just like eating salad. If you're eating chips normally. It's horrible at first, but you know what? Persistence. Consistency is key.
Great, Kev. Great. That's the longest episode I've done yet.
I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize. I loved it. I could have gone on longer, definitely.
Sure.
We'll have to
I know
just
how
get
to
you on
talk.
again in the future. You and Ben will have to come on together. That would be great.
Oh, that'd be good fun. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ben. I'm sure Ben would be up for that. Yeah. We love a natter.
Good. I'll come up there and go through the experience, and then we can all have a little chat. So we'll have to do that in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, you'll love it.
Thank you, Kev. I appreciate your time. Appreciate all that you're doing. Where can people find you if they do want to find out more about what you're doing?
You can find me at breatheolution.com. Obviously, you can go to Instagram and Breatheolution on Instagram. You can see some of the work I've done on there, but only a very, very small amount of it. Hopefully, over the next couple of months, I'm going to be releasing some courses for people to do. People are going to be able to sort of log on and check out some videos that I'm going into sort of areas in lots more detail. And obviously, I'm working one-to-one with people, either online or in person. So everybody's going to get an opportunity to understand a little bit of what we spoke about tonight, hopefully.
You've had the great Mr. Stephen Graham, the Hollywood actor, lovely scouser there, haven't you? He's joined you in the...
He has, yeah. Stephen's lovely. He's a great guy. He still sends me the odd message, and I speak to his wife, Hannah, on occasion as well. They're so down to earth. They're such beautiful people. And Stephen come over with his son and his son's friend, and we got in the river and they had a swim about and that. It was, we danced around a bit and it was good fun. We enjoyed it. We had a good day.
Great. Well, listen, take care, Kev. Thank you once again. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll continue to follow your journey, and I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in person. Yeah. And thanks so much again for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks for
Take care. Nice one. Thanks, Kev. Bye-bye. Well, that was episode 5 of Rebel Without a Limit, the mindset podcast to support you in living with a limitless mind. And that was my first episode sharing a technique or a few techniques that will support you in doing just that. And wow, I'm grateful for that. Just over an hour of an episode. Great time, great chat. Really appreciate Kevin's time and knowledge, really, and experience that he's just shared there. Do get in touch with him if it resonates. Have a little chat with him, get signed up, let us know how you get on, and I look forward to having more chats with him. Catch up on the other episodes. I've got more to come. I'm Hayley Coxon, and this was Rebel Without a Limit.